Well, I want to thank the Ridgeville Park District for sending some lovely flowers over to the memorial service for our son James Marcus. Happened the 25th of January. I don't know if you were there, but at least it was a good service and the flowers were a nice addition, so thank you.
A pleasure. Ma'am, the person in the back, Sarah.
Oh, hi. I'm here just for Garden to Table, and I believe we're on the agenda.
Okay, sorry. I think that was next, actually. So, is that an agenda item with you?
Actually, Amy Dale is scheduled to be here to be the primary speaker, and
Well,
she hasn't arrived yet.
wait for a little while then.
Thank you.
Take a look for a minute.
Thank you, Rita, for the electric minutes. That worked very well.
Good.
And I make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second?
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. How about the bills?
Want to go through?
Yes, please.
You've got AEP is payroll times 3. That's why it looks large. Perks and products, as we go down the list, is our giveaways that we give away, like at Bike the Ridge or concerts or Shakespeare, things of that nature, backpacks and bags. Bonfilio Camacho is the kitchen. He actually is leaving for Mexico tomorrow, so we hold the check till he gets back and he finishes. And it's about, overall, it's about 85% done. Cabinets are about 75% done.
When's he coming back?
A couple of weeks, but Ruben's going to finish the bottom cabinets, then we're going to order the countertop. So it'll be done before next board meeting for sure. Where am I at? Citgo is, there's 2 different bills. They changed our card, so it's about 6 weeks of bills. A lot of snow plowing, a lot of snow blowing in those bills you see right there. City of Evanston's water bill for 908 Seward. ComEd, Groot Industries, our garbage. Home Depot, tons of kitchen supplies, drywall, subfloor, floor, paint. I believe it's called BX plywood. That we put on the floor so we don't scratch the finished floor. International Payment Solutions is 2 months. Attorney fees is 2 months. That's why it's so high.
Remind me, International Payment Solution?
That's the credit card. This is our busy time for camps and class registrations. That's 2 months, December, January. Medco is first aid kits for the summer, and that's actually paid for by a grant from our insurance carrier. We get $557 of that back. Nightcore is 908 Seward and Cayman times 2, December and January, electronically paid. And then Russo is salt, and post office is 1 of 2 meters, so 1 and take pen caps, so stamps for the meter.
Can I make a motion that we approve corporate bills in the amount of $25,938.46?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Bills approved. Petty cash.
Petty cash. Ann Andrews is a refund for class. Freedom and Ford tail light for the F-250, that's the snowplow truck, backed into a snow pile and broke the tail light. The City of Evanston water is the water and hydrant permit. Kirsten is a refund for yoga. Anna Nelson's a variety of reimbursements. One's for the IAPD pre-conference and a new HEPA filter vacuum. Carol Nimrod's art class teacher, art supplies, office bags, office supplies. $40 to me is reimbursement for the crew lunch we talked about last month. Sam's Club, variety of paper towels, Kleenex, envelopes. Brian Smith's our fitness instructor, that's equipment for his room, his class is booming. And the post office is more stamp meter, which we are all caught up on now. That's it.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve petty cash.
I motion that we approve petty cash in the amount of $1,567.23.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, did Amy come in?
Yep, I'm here.
There she is.
Sorry, I drove right past it and had to turn around and double back, so my
Okay.
apologies.
If I can introduce Amy.
Could you sign in, Amy, or if you haven't signed in yet, if you don't mind signing in?
It's a pleasure to introduce Amy. She has been our teacher in the garden table class, and I was one of the students. And I probably failed the class and came with the least amount of knowledge about gardening when it started. But one thing I do believe in is community building. And Amy and the peers, the other students, developed a pretty cool community this summer that was just a hoot. And I'll let Amy do all the talking, but I think she walks on water. Just really proud of what you're able to do. It was a tough year. And also I want to say thank you to Mike Drennan, because it was really his brainstorm, I believe, and effort to bring this to our park district. And I think there's going to be a really long, good organic gardening future there. So thank you, Mike.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Dan introduced me. I'm Amy Dale. I'm a master gardener at the Chicago Botanic Gardens and the founder of Green Eden's Horticultural Services. And I had the pleasure of teaching the garden to table class last year with Gabrielle Casterjohn, who's over here. Gabrielle is from the herb garden, and she also is a chef and a naturopath as well, so she brought many gifts to the class. I'm going to use my notes so I don't forget to say anything. We also will be bringing 2 new teachers this year. James Zaraza, who is a biologist, a botanist, and a carpenter, and Craig Sater, who has a degree in permaculture, studied in Israel with permaculture. He ran community gardens at Benton House in the city and teaches urban agriculture, so it's quite a talented staff that we're bringing on board this year. I'm here because the alumni class enjoyed the class so much that they would like to expand Garden to Table to a second class on Thursdays, and we know Thursdays the boardroom is used 1 day a week, so I have everything Sandra helped me to put together, she's the secretary, as to the breakdown of the class, the budget for both classes. We're proposing expanding the garden beds on the south side of the driveway to mirror the garden beds that are there for the addition of the class and make it look very appealing to the eye, adding perennial native flowers that attract pollinators, which are really good for the garden. So people who've seen it from the street, it's attracted a lot of interest, and there are a lot of people who are interested in taking the class, and some experienced gardeners who could join the alumni class to cover the budget for both classes. So we would have a Monday evening class for the beginners. And on Thursday, 3 Thursdays of the week, we would have the advanced class. That would end at 7:45, and again, we would not be using the room on Thursday that you have your board meetings. We would be in the garden and possibly using the kitchen unless that's too disturbing for you, so that would be up to you. Sandra has put together a booklet with all the information that you would need to know about this. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. There. Excuse me. Okay. We are also proposing to add fencing this year, because last year, as you know, we had the orange plastic that would fall over and was very difficult and didn't look very nice either, so we've included that in the budget. And the classes do cover the budgets. We would like to add a propagation system this year, which will end up paying for itself in a few seasons so that we can grow produce from seedlings. That's a very important part for the gardeners to learn. And it's much less expensive to grow things from seedlings than it is to purchase plants for the garden. We would also like to add a drip line irrigation system this year. We had problems with watering last year. It's the most efficient way of watering the garden at the ground level. And again, would actually save money on water for the district. And please, sorry?
Lighting, outdoor lighting.
Oh yes, lighting. The class wanted me to talk about last year if we could possibly get outdoor lighting, as it was a safety issue. And as the days change and things start to get dark, it's very hard to see when you're in the garden. That was not included in the budget. I want to tell you the exact areas that we're talking about. Sandra, the lighting was in the alleyway, yes, on the side, and in the gardens that we were proposing outdoor lighting for.
It would be great to have lighting near the beds, so as we're actually working in the garden, we can see what we're doing. But the entire perimeter of the building is very, very dark on some nights, and the ground is very uneven. So as we're going, even the back porch area, that light didn't work for a while. And going down the stairs, carrying dishes and things, it was a little bit treacherous at times. So to avoid any liability or any injuries, we think outdoor lighting would be a really good idea.
Sandra is one of the alumni from last year and really helped us to organize. She's the one who started the blog, and this year she's going to put together a website for Garden to Table, which will have the curriculum for the classes and have a syllabus, and people will be able to get any documents that we give out to the class through that system, and we'll continue the blog. And I know that Sandra and Gabby have more questions, so I wanted to leave that open to them, but I just wanted to tell you how much we enjoyed it. It was our favorite thing that we did all year, and such a wonderful community of people. I think that was the best part about the class, because it brought a whole group of people together who hadn't previously known each other. And now they're working on each other's gardens and having dinner together and getting together, and I would love to see that grow in the Ridgeville community. It was really a wonderful experience, and we're all very dedicated to this program. So I'll leave it open for some questions.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion, if I could, that Ridgeville Park District accept this proposal for 2 garden-to-table classes that are budgeted $12,494.40, beginning this year.
Second?
I think we need a little time to look at this and determine the cost situation of it, frankly, and where it's going to be.
Here.
And exactly where it's going to be and how that's going to impact other events that we have on the stage and that sort of stuff. So I'm frankly not prepared to vote today until I have a chance to review this.
Well, there's a motion, we'll need to vote.
Okay?
Now, I would like to say and advocate for going ahead with the class for a couple of reasons. One, it's an example of a very successful program where we actually had community members come in, brand new, and develop it so much that they want to do it again. Secondly, it paid for itself, and I believe the budget speaks for itself. It's something that should not take out of our actual budget, it should pay for itself. Third, I'm committed, and I've talked with Mike Merrill, to actually, he'll help me, but I want to write 2 grants for a total of $15,000 that we would be, if we are awarded them through the open lands and also the Mennonite Learning Center, that we would be able to get about $15,000 before the summer starts. So my hope is, and I do believe, and I'm confident, that we have a very good chance at that grant that will more than pay for this actual program. And my hope is that with any extra money through that, plus the student fees, that we'll be able to enhance our parkland with the lighting and other things.
I
Maybe
mean, the
water
student fees
source.
at this point the student fees are basically designed to cover the substantive class costs.
That's right.
The seeds, some of the equipment, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right.
So with that, and with the bulk of that covered, and with the word of mouth we have going into the community on this, what Dan's really trying to do is sort of build a profile of the program and indirectly Ridgeville by asking for these additional grant investments. It seems so.
Does it make sense to get the grants before we commit to it?
No, the season starts now. In fact, we were hoping to start here in March before the next meeting, because some of the gardening that has to happen and some of the education that has to happen is to really teach students, you know, how to grow the seeds and how to get the soil together. And we want to include this year students in actually building identical mirror raised gardens that we have right here by our building just across the parking lot, so that the students themselves will be able to actually build these raised gardens.
I mean, it seems like you're minimizing the, you know, just taking additional parkland that is used for concerts, like the Ridge, other aspects. I have no clue where you want to do this on paper. I know you're pointing to an area, but to me, I mean, this is the first I've seen this 10 minutes ago, and to approve a budget of $12,000, to me, that's a little bit, pushing it a little bit. I'm sorry, Rob, what were you going to say?
I just have a question. Are young people involved? I hear students. So what does that cover? Is this just adults, or is it going to be some young people
It's
involved?
a good question. Anyone, of course, who is in the district or outside the district can become a class member, so there's not really an age limit. We actually had some visitors from the neighborhood in their 80s that really enjoyed the gardening. We also had some folks that were about 1.5 years old that couldn't see over the raised garden. So we did have a wide variety of age groups. The classes, the actual students were all adults. What part of my grant I would like to do is follow our mayor's suggestion that we think about ways we can reach out to our youth. You know, since Day's murder and some of the other problems that we've been having with our youth, is to find ways that we maybe can attract them. And through our gardening program and the grant, what I'd like to do is encourage youth in our area to volunteer with us, find ways that we can bring them into the gardens. And for instance, if they were able to put in, we could agree on how many hours of voluntary service, but then that grant would pay them a camping experience at the end of the summer. For instance, canoeing up in the Boundary Waters. I would just love to be able to see this summer a way for our park district to reach out to our youth in a creative way that's green and organic and outdoor, and then reward them if they volunteer with us with some kind of a camp experience.
How much of this is in this year's budget? What's not clear is this budget is for the whole program, but this program spans 2 fiscal years. So how much of this expense is in this current fiscal year, and is it in our appropriations ordinance? And if not, what are we cutting to fit it in? And how much of it is in next year's fiscal, so that when we go into that, you've got to be sure to build it into the tax levy, build it into the appropriations.
So can I clarify just a couple of things?
Or is it all
So
revenue paid for?
the new class, this year's new garden to table class, is, we think, going to be completely paid for, because we're going to have 15 to 20 new people. We have the beds already built, and with the registrations we'll take in, we'll cover the supplies for the class, and enough for a basic fence, of which we have some pictures. Really, the only issue is, so that we have wide agreement on. This Ridgeville staff agrees, Amy, we all agree. It's really just the issue of the space for the new beds for the alumni class. Where are those beds going to be? And how many people we're going to get for that alumni class to cover the cost of the new beds.
And what to charge them.
Yeah.
We haven't agreed on a cost for that class.
Yeah.
Right, we're proposing charging $295.
Right. So if we charge the same amount as this year's crop, then you know, it's really just a question of the new beds, and that's how we're in agreement. Just so we're clear, we're in agreement that this year's new garden table class is a go, green light. We've started accepting registrations for it.
It is. I think that doesn't answer Jerry's question.
But it touches on a point that I was trying to bring out, which is some of this budget is already in our plans for the year.
It is plans for the year.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
and some of it isn't. And that's what's not clear, I think, for the
Right.
commissioners to make an informed
Well,
decision.
I think there's
as to what
also,
they're
in
gonna
that budget, there's also some things that I think Amy asked as a wish list that we don't have in our budget that we've allotted for yet,
do.
so.
Well, and the other issue behind the question is the timing of things. If all the expenses are up front and in this year, but the revenue comes after July, or after the end of fiscal.
Well, the grants are,
I don't know the answer, I'm just asking the questions, but, you know, we gotta understand that, because
Do they pay up front?
Yeah, I mean, we're allowing for people to do a payment plan, but ideally they would pay the rest of their balance before the end of the fiscal year. So, yeah, the revenue and the expenses are in this fiscal year, is the short answer to your question.
the projection of 20 people in the advanced class, is that?
No, not for the advanced class, I don't think we're,
15 is reasonable in my opinion on that.
What if we don't get 15?
In your budget here, it says 20, just so you know.
What if we get?
So what happens if you only get 10? I mean, how do you work that out cost-wise?
that's what's still up in the air, because, you know, we're trying to get firm numbers on how many of the alumni, the people who participated last year are for sure gonna do it again.
And it's not limited to the alumni.
It's not just limited to the alum, but we haven't, I mean, Amy and I talked the other day, and she talked about the idea of opening it up to people who have had some gardening experience, but we haven't formalized that into what exactly that means exactly. Just that we're gonna, if only 6 to 8 people from last year's class participated, we're gonna need more people in order to pay for the cost of the class. Both the instructors, who put in tons of time, and then the new beds and all the new supplies.
In fact, last year, I think when we started this Gardens to Table, there was the hope that a grant that you wrote, Mike, would come through to help offset, and we didn't get that grant. So there is a history of us reaching out and taking a risk, but I think with the strong community support and the reasonableness of much of the cost being covered by student fees, it's a good risk for what we get.
So I
Well,
know.
do we have a couple thousand in the budget that we could put towards this if we indeed don't get 20 or 15 people in the alumni class?
If you look at the appropriation ledger, we're kind of running quite a bit over budget for the year so far. We're not looking very good right now financially.
But we still have the 300,000, right, that's in the budget. That's not, that's in the general fund.
I'm not talking cash balances to the park district, I'm talking our rate of spending relative to the appropriations ordinance.
Well, I'm talking about that fund we've talked about before that carries over each year, the 300,000.
Yeah, you still
Well,
have
That's your working.
Yeah.
Would
We're
it
hoping
make
not to
sense
touch it,
to up
but
the
it's
price
there.
of the alumni class a
No, it
little
isn't.
bit?
Sure.
I'm sorry?
I mean,
not
would
there.
it, would it make sense to raise the price for the alumni
That's to
class
get
a
you to
little bit,
the
or
collection
for
of
both,
taxes.
or?
I mean, I feel like the area we serve, we raised the class, it was $250 last year, we raised it to $295, which is still, I mean, given that the class is running 8 months, I think very affordable, but I do think if we go too much higher, there's gonna be some sticker shock of people.
And we've already advertised the intro class as $295, so.
Yeah. But I think there's 2 issues. One is how many beds there should be, how many beds we need for the alumni class, and then the location of the beds. So I know, you know, we talked about maybe that there would still be room for some additional beds on this side of the driveway. Is that something that,
Well, my thought and the class's thought on mirroring the current raised bed on the other side of the driveway here in the front,
yeah,
people driving by, which about thousands of folks a day back and forth, it might be pleasing to the eye to see sort of a symmetrical green garden thing growing. It's free advertising. And I think it would actually look better than having a lopsided kind of a garden.
But again, it's taking space that we utilize for concerts, for like the Ridge, and I think, what are the sight lines? How do you take a left turn out of there? Has that been looked at? I mean, if you've got beds and you put, you know, the cellophane up there, does that block the street? And I'm uncomfortable with it without knowing exactly where. Expanding it where it's there right now, I think that's not in anybody's way. That's doable, but to take additional parkland without thoroughly looking at it, I'm very uncomfortable with that, especially when that area is used by something else.
I want to challenge you on taking up parkland. We're not taking, developing our parkland.
We're developing it.
Different use.
You're taking
and
it for
many
something
community
else.
members are using it, so we're not losing it.
Yeah, I mean, let's
15 people, we've got
consider.
1,000 people for the bike to ridge. They come
Yeah,
here.
check, let's consider. So essentially, we're driving out onto the ridge from the parking lot. We're having to check left, we're having to check right. Currently, if I was driving northbound, I'm gonna check right, I'm gonna see some foliage. Not a big deal, I can turn right out there. That left turn, if there's foliage on the left side, you're not gonna be able to gauge traffic perhaps as well, maybe not. But I'm wondering perhaps your issue may have more to do with having the real estate available for load in, load out on concert dates, load in, load out for bike ridge and other events. I mean, that piece of grass on the south side of the drive would be valuable on those counts. Perhaps worries you for that reason. Okay. Well, we should probably attend to that.
Sure.
And recognize that either building additional beds on the north side and considering their placement for proper utility of the parking lot seems reasonable.
And I just want to say, we very much care about how it looks aesthetically. Like, I like the people driving by and it looking great for Ridgeville too. And I don't know, maybe Amy can speak to this, whether you think there would be room to add 3 or 4 more beds. We looked at it, just kind of eyeballing it, and thought maybe, and then some of the flower structure that you were talking about, whether that would be possible on the north side. Do you want to weigh in on that, or?
I think that there's definitely room for more beds on that side, and I could certainly, if you gave me a plat of survey, draw it out for you and get it back to you right away so you could have a picture of what you would be looking at. If it's hard for you to visualize, I would be very happy to do that.
That'd be helpful.
And the beds would not be as big because I specified the beds to actually be 6 feet by only 4 feet wide, and they were made much larger than they needed to be. So what we're doing this year is we're going to add perennial flowers in the middle where it's hard to get to. The small children would get up and crawl in the middle of the bed for us to, because they're so wide. The perennials will come back every year. You'll never have to replant them, and they attract butterflies, and they'll look beautiful. It'll make the gardens look beautiful. And the fencing that we're proposing is very inexpensive. It's 4 vegetable gardens, and it looks very nice, and it will definitely blend in with the landscape.
Patrick, would you feel better about the idea if we did explore this area instead? Okay.
I also have many people who are interested in taking the advanced class who couldn't get in last year that I know of personally. But I don't want to say anything until I get the go-ahead, but there are many people who are interested in the class.
Just as a show of support, I'm new to the board. I don't know if you folks know me, I'm Rob Bay. But Dan and I came in together, and I just think it's a sign of good progress that a program is taking off. And I just want to say thank you for your hard work. I think it's a good sign for the Park District that this particular program is actually taking off. So I just want to put that out there as thank you to you guys for doing a good job, number one. Because I think we need to embrace the idea that our Park District needs to grow in a lot of ways. And some of those ways are not what we've seen in the past. So with this particular program, I think it's a very good sign. And I just want the board, everybody in the room to embrace that. And let's see kind of how we can think a little bit broader. I'd like to think, for us to think a little bit broader on that. So I encourage it.
Thanks, Rob.
Can we talk about one other part of this, the beehive?
I was just looking at that.
Because I know we met with Amy, and the beehive is scary to me because of 100 kids in camp. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, Dan, you were proposing a certain area that was out of the way
Sure,
for the
right.
beehive.
Right.
the way the beehive is built and what's surrounding it, and it would be good for me to send you more information about that, but they're given a direct flight pattern. And these, a lot of people tend to think of wasps when they're thinking of bees or hornets, and these are very harmless bees, but we had an area that would be out of the way. And Dan, you also checked into the rules on that with Evanston. There are how many that are allowed?
There's Evanston beehive, I forget the actual name, apiary, is that correct?
Yes.
The beehive ordinance for the city of Evanston is pretty straightforward. Evanston city leaders encourage legal, appropriately well-managed kind of beehives where you can have up to 8, I believe, per ward. So that would be a question, is, you know, how many are in the wards? I don't know the answer to that, but there must be a bee expert downtown. There's a $25 fee to get the license to be a bee farmer, and they simply ask that you follow some of the safety protocols to answer what you're talking about, Brian. And I in particular like the idea of trying to locate a beehive that maybe is on a roof, you know, above ground, where kids can't have access. I mean, it'd have to be a locked gate, fencing, something like that to keep kids away.
There also is a woman in the district, in Ridgeville district, who ran a bee farm in Sudan and lost everything, who I think would be a wonderful candidate to run this and take care of it, and could also give you much more information than I can on beehives and how they're run and about the flight pattern.
So a point of concern being how to manage a population of bees with 30, 40 odd campers literally on a daily basis during prime growing season. There are kids all over the place, very curious, rather reckless. So have you identified spots thus far for locating the hive?
I know our church at Reba has a very large roof that we've explored as a community, and I know there's a lot of interest in our Reba Fellowship in exploring that further. So it could be that we could have some kind of a collaborative agreement where the beehive is on one of our property roofs. We have a lot of roofs in the area. Also here we've got, I think it's the salt storage shed. Something like that, where we could build something on top of there, flatten it out, and have a space, maybe 8 by 8 up there.
Kids occasionally get up on that roof and mess around, so.
I'm sorry?
Kids occasionally get up on that roof and mess around.
It's not entirely kid-proof.
We'd have
Not
to secure it.
kid-proof.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, wouldn't that be, I mean, we're a park, we're attracting kids on a regular basis. If there's somebody that's allergic to a bee sting in our park, and God forbid somebody got bit, wouldn't we be liable? I mean, we're encouraging kids in our park, we have day camp programs, and we have a beehive in that park. Would there be some liability there?
Yes.
Okay.
But Brian and I had talked about this the other day, and so we were thinking of off-site areas.
Okay, somewhere totally off the Ridgeville property.
And that's something more to explore, and the person who was supposed to be here tonight, who is the beekeeper, was not able to make it. And she could have, yeah, she could have answered your questions much better than I can. That's her area of expertise.
Can we agree to explore this a little longer?
Of course.
Oh, yeah, the location of the actual beehive has to be
Definitely.
determined,
Yeah.
so everyone feels comfortable with it.
Again, that was my wish list,
Yeah.
and so,
But I think you'll find as soon as you dig into the actual bee farming in urban settings, it's pretty darn safe. There's a lot of phobias out there that aren't based on science research. And I think you'll find our city leaders support 8 beehives per ward because it is relatively safe. As long as you secure the hive so the kids can't get in there and knock it over or throw balls at it, that kind of
There are state requirements too, not just cities, so. you know,
Well,
look into
That could be an optional part of the program, couldn't it? I mean, we could not,
Yes.
I mean, I guess what I'm thinking is that if we don't fill the class completely, the alumni class, then we could knock out a couple of these items and then cover our costs. So, I mean, I think I'm okay with going ahead with trying to fill these classes, but I think we might have to say if we can't get, 15 to 18 people, then we can't run the class.
However, if we
Oh,
get the
if we can
$50,000
run the
grant,
class. We can always run the class.
right in?
Well, yeah, the grant, sure, I mean, but right now, with what the reality is right now, we're just covering costs for the class. I mean, if we, if we can say we'll run it at a certain amount.
Well, the grant money for the Mennonite Learning Center, we put it in March 1st, and we get, if we get the funding, we get that on May 1st. And then the open land $15,000 grant goes in on March 15th, we get that June 1st, if we're awarded that.
Uh-huh.
So it would be early on, in the summer or late spring, we would know better how we're doing financially.
Dan, is that coming through the foundation? Would that be awarded to the
No,
foundation?
to our, well,
Directly to the park
I
district?
assume it's directly to the park district.
Oh, okay. Can we do that, a grant, accept grants like that?
Sure.
It's generally at the discretion of the funding organization. A lot of them have requirements that they only give it to 501c3s.
And they can earmark it for,
You go to the foundation,
And then we go to the
foundation.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if they're specifically earmarking it for that, we would honor that earmark.
okay.
But I just want to clarify, so are we saying then with the alumni class then, because we're going to have to make some decisions, so if the grant money comes in May, we'll know one of them May 1st. When would we want to start planting for the alumni class? When were you thinking?
That's the tough part. We'd have to start advertising now for the class.
Oh yeah, we'd have to start advertising the
Yeah.
class now.
And it's about 5 weeks, isn't it, until planting date, which is usually no fear of frost after Mother's Day. That's when you start to plant the seeds, but you need to propagate them beforehand. We could start that with the beginners class.
I would propose that, we think about going into the class, if we're running into financial problems at any time, we could merge the classes with the same soil and people.
I'm just
work
thinking about
on-
how many beds, like we know we're gonna build, if we're all in agreement that we're gonna build 3 to 4 more beds on the north side, is that what the consensus is?
And it was 4 by 6 beds in terms
Yeah.
of size, which is smaller than we have now.
Right.
Then we could probably fit 4 for sure.
What do you say, 3, 4, 4 by 6?
And the cool thing about the class curriculum, it goes beyond the beds, so that if we end up with actually more people and more money, we could start prettying up our park a little bit. Our classmates want to put flowers and vines and those kind of things.
The bed situation, we get you here next week and plot a survey, I think I can dig up.
I just need
I
a
get you
copy.
on site, we
Definitely.
can walk it, snow's gonna be gone by next Friday.
I'll bring James, I'll bring James, who's my carpenter, and definitely, I'd be happy to do that.
Appreciate it. Could we vote?
Do we want to amend the motion?
Sounds like we have the ingredients necessary for our garden table class as it stands. That's practically a fait accompli. We do have some aspects to consider for the alumni class, for the advanced class. And these include placement of a possible beehive, as well as 3 to 4 raised beds of somewhere between 4 and 6 feet. So perhaps we could amend amend to say we motion to approve this year's garden table class and explore, I don't know if explore is strong enough, but perhaps cite by next meeting locations for raised beds and a beehive. Does that make sense?
We could go simpler than that if you'd like.
That'd be
Because we don't have a
great.
second yet. We could go with the motion, but just with the understanding is, Brian can kind of oversee with the board's approval, where those beds will be, probably on this north side area. Yeah.
And so it would change some of these cost items too, so in other words.
It would lower.
It would lower the cost, so we could investigate the funding
That's right.
mechanism.
Yes.
But we need to build the beds within 5
Right.
weeks.
We should build them quick, get going.
I mean, when the snow's gone.
Absolutely.
I mean, so is the board okay, like, to get Pat over here and say,
Yeah.
there we go, Dan, what do you got?
I'm good with that.
Boom.
You're gonna meet with Amy next week, when the snow melts, basically?
Well, yeah, or put on some boots, whatever.
I'm happy to do that, absolutely. James and I were here to look at it before, and we can do that and set a date to build the beds. And I have people, Eagle Scouts, who will help as well, so I have enough people who would help to build the beds.
To move the picnic table, so.
Yes.
Just for fun, I can throw out the idea, if there's not enough room and you need to move the cannon off to another location, that's okay with me.
Just so you know, the cannon's previous to everybody here.
The alumni is also going to help with building the beds because they want to learn, that's part of it, how to build a raised bed properly. So we have plenty of help for that.
So then I move to amend your motion, Dan, that we approve funding for the garden to table classes, with an understanding Brian will assist in site placement for new beds, as well as for the beehive.
Second. I think we have to vote on the motion, the amendment, then do the motion.
I think so.
What do we approve
Aye.
budget-wise?
Well, I think your analysis of the numbers subject to, a budget and projections of whatever.
Can we vote on this amendment?
That's the amendment I
So you made a motion, did we get a second?
Oh, I did.
Yeah,
Dan
Dan.
seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's approved.
Can we vote on the motion?
The actual motion. We just amended the original motion. Now we need to vote on the actual motion.
The actual motion was?
To,
Accept the provision.
thanks. Read back me up, girl.
I mean, it
Original
seemed
motion
to me
is
he
to
said
accept the-
he made the motion.
Was to-
It seemed like his motion was enough that it included an amendment and the original motion.
No.
But I think we have to vote on the amendment and then vote on the motion.
No, you don't have to vote on the amendment if the amendment is accepted by the
Oh,
person who made the original
So we're
motion,
good.
which you did.
Okay, we're good.
Got it, thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your work, Amy.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
Amy, we will call you Friday or Monday.
That would be wonderful because we have a couple more questions of when we would be able to post the second class on the website so I could start advertising the class to people who are interested.
Commercial opportunities are there.
The city has informed me that anytime we want to advertise on their website, they'll do it at no cost. So if you give a call there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, they link our farmer's market to theirs, if it's, however, yeah.
And they also said they'd be very willing to put out an email blurb. Ours is around 600, is that right, on our email list?
Or 750.
750? They might have a bigger email blurb, so they'd be willing to do that for us too.
Right.
I just wonder if there'd be a way to tie our farmer's market to this
That would be
somehow.
wonderful.
Like, I don't know.
Well, originally, when we conceived of the program last year, we had hopes, if grant money ever did come in, that the master gardeners would have a little booth at the farmer's market and be a sort of community resource guide for gardening, like where people could come and just kind of ask them questions, and then they could walk over to the gardens and say, so this is how your blah blah should be looking, or this is how, so that was how it was conceived. We haven't gotten the funding for that yet, but that's something that if, any of these two grants came in, there would be money.
And the other cool thing is on our Main Street merchants, the restaurant owners there that I've talked to, about a half a dozen, are all very interested in anything we grow, using it in their restaurants. So there's another angle, or another area we could use to help the community. It's good for them because they can advertise locally grown, no oil, we can walk the produce over to them. And then also it gives us a chance to spread the word what we're doing.
Especially things like microgreens, which are a crop that just keeps producing. There are many crops that you get quite a few out of that we would be able to do that with.
Okay. Brian, you want to do your report?
Excuse me, did everybody sign in who came in after we started?
Sir, did you sign in?
No, I did not.
Right up here to the,
Are we ready?
yes.
My report, the kitchen behind us is almost complete. It'll take 3 more weeks because there's a delayed process in ordering the countertops. They come out, and the cabinets are fully installed, or measure the countertops, and then build and bring them out. That will be done next week. So by next board meeting, you'll have a completed kitchen. If anybody wants to see it, great time, just give me a call, come on over. It's hard to get in there now, there's tools everywhere and cabinets that aren't quite installed. But, I mean, if you ever want to see it, give me a call, we'll get you in there. We had some delays in building due to the weather, and it seems like every other snow is on Saturday, which doesn't bode well for overtime or keeping the budget in check. So as Jerry will talk about later, we've incurred some costs with the snow, the ice, the salt. It's just, boy, last winter was easy compared to this one. This one's been a tough one. We need to proceed very carefully in the remaining months of our fiscal year. Jerry and I had a brief discussion. We're going to meet some more, try to figure out how we're going to maneuver a little bit and ensure that we keep costs in check.
Did we overspend, Brian, or are you alluding to that we overspent because of?
Well, no, I'm alluding to the last 2 months overtime's been a killer.
Okay.
We can talk a little more detail when we get to the appropriations ledger.
Great. And there's some payroll costs that just the way the payrolls fell, it's nobody's fault, it's the calendar. So it is what it is. Next week we'll begin summer staff hiring interview process. Diane and I will be conducting interviews in a little seminar at the Youth Job Center Outpost at ETHS on February 24th. And Diane and Mike will give you an update on overall camp registration, but it's going fantastic. I have an item that I didn't put in my report, but we need to sell the truck, the Ranger. It's been in the parking lot since the fall. But anyway, I'd like to sell it. I'd like to, post it, put it out there, see if we can sell it. Pat and I actually went through, what's it called, Edmunds?
Edmunds.com is just a website that indicates what values of cars are. We use it at St. Nick's for when we sell cars over there.
The Ranger is a 2000, not a 2001. And when I ran it through in rough shape. It's in very rough shape. Needs muffler, needs brake work, needs interior work. And it came back, when I ran it through, it came back at $1,500. I don't think we'll be able to get close to $1,500 for that, but we will try. I just need approval to go ahead and sell this thing.
Do you need a motion?
I don't know, do I need a motion, David?
Well, I'm sorry.
We want to sell the Ranger.
How much is you expect?
Do you have the Edmunds.com?
Well, you probably should have a motion to get rid of it.
I so move. Sell it.
So I have a quick question before we motion. So what's the plan to replace it?
We already replaced it.
Oh, we already?
Yeah, we already replaced it.
Thanks.
It just hasn't been sold.
We've got the new truck, we just got to do it.
Okay.
The Edmunds that.
How many miles does it have?
It's got 100 plus, easy.
The odometer
The
stop.
odometer stopped at about 9,000.
What's everybody on?
1706, but you have 2001, when I ran it,
I'm usually familiar with the 2000 Ranger because I've got friends.
1595.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to sell.
No second.
No second. I second the motion to sell the
What
Ranger.
year is it?
2000.
2000 Ranger, not the, we've got another Ranger.
So we just asked 1,600 basically? See if we get 1,600.
That would be great, that would be great.
You might be surprised you didn't get it.
Those little cars.
They're very in demand right now. I say that from the experience of someone else I know who's got a 2000.
So when you do something like that, where does that money go? Does it just go back into operating expenses? How does that, will you cover that or?
In your report. They'll deposit it in the bank and then I'll have to account for it somehow.
Okay.
It's just ordinary, it's just.
Miscellaneous revenue.
Yeah.
Got it.
Which is good since we're sitting with a negative number in our miscellaneous revenue of several grand.
So the motion was to go ahead and sell the 2000 Ranger, asking price of 1,600 bucks.
Okay.
What if I get a?
Why say?
I mean, just sell it. Get it off.
Sell for the best available price.
You can put it on Craigslist, throw it on there, put a sign on it. And put a post
We have a
And
motion.
a second.
There's a second, all in favor?
And one other thing, anybody want to see this, I'll start with Dan. These are just thank yous, 3 or 4, I should say, 4 or 5 local schools and/or 501c3s have asked for donations to their fundraisers. We typically don't fill a camp or 2, so we send camp, and they'll auction them off. One's YOU,
And open.
Oakton, Dawes has just asked, and we always cooperate and send things. Pass those around.
So you give them a camp spot, basically?
Yeah, they raffle
And
it
they
off.
auction them and
They
they
send them with a certificate.
Jerry?
Maybe the typical reports, starting with the, just real quick, because the only thing I'm going to comment on there, real brief, on the ledger balance sheet. Please correct the upper left corner. I noticed I missed updating the date there. It should say that it's through January 31st of, as of today, 2/13/2014.
So it should say
Through
30.
January 31st, as of yesterday. All right, sorry, as of today. Yesterday after midnight. I gotta find a way to automatically update that date this time. Yeah, and the only thing I would highlight on, I mean, it's just the normal kind of accounting numbers that I'm sure are aware of everybody, but the bank balances are pretty, they're on the low side because we haven't had any tax revenue coming in and we've been spending money going out. And, you know, we spent out.
So we're spending on schedule, but the state isn't.
We spent out about $55,000 last month, and you notice we've only got about 130,000, 140,000 in our checking accounts. You know, we've got money over in our CDs and other things, but in our working checking accounts, we got about twice of what we spent in the last 30 days sitting in there, which is getting about as low as I've seen in the time I've been around the park district. So that's just the timing. You know, once we start to get to March 1st and the tax bills due, we'll start to see big tax deposits coming in. But,
Do you think it's fair to say that before our next meeting, there might be a tax deposit?
oh, they're constantly making tax
Oh,
deposits, but right now, all we're getting are kind of people that are late paying their taxes and taxes for last year's and disputed legal things. And then all of a sudden, you know, there's the big mailing of tax bills and there'll be a whole bunch of taxes. Isn't the first installment March 1st that it's due? So everybody's got to pay their first
March
installment.
3rd or 4th or something.
Yeah.
But you don't get that money right away. You'll get it mid-March, maybe?
We'll get it pretty quick and in a big chunk. But,
Yeah, I think so. We're in good shape in terms of that.
yeah,
You don't have to transfer that money.
right. You know, it's just, I mean, you watch that data. You see it before I see it because you're working the accounts every day in the office. I just see it at the end of the month when the statement's come. I can see it. It's getting low. Let's turn to the appropriation ledger, because this is what I was alluding to earlier, and you'll come to appreciate kind of why I'm starting to express a little concern. Particularly what I'm looking at is what's our expended year to date versus our remaining balance for the year. Given where we're at in the year, we should be kind of, and looking at the year-to-date column, we should kind of be at about 54%. And you see we're running close to 60% of our money spent already. So we're running ahead. We've been running ahead, and I thought the winter months, as some of the programs slow down, we would catch up a little bit in that cycle. We haven't been. I've decided to pull last year's appropriations ledger for the same month and see how we do it compared to that. Year over year, we are sitting at a position right now where we've spent $80,000 more than we did at this same time last year. And as far as remaining money to get us from now until fiscal year end, we are $55,000 short of what we had remaining last year. So our expenses are running way over, and our remaining balance to work with relative to our budget is lower. That's not a good combination of figures. If I start to go through it and look at it kind of line by line, what's it happening? Now, we knew some of this was here because we knew part of our problem was in the summer months, the timing of the summer programs shifted basically some of last year's fiscal expenses into this fiscal year, just because of the timing of when school let out and all that, because our budgeting process isn't that precise. We had a milder than normal winter last year, which depressed our spending activity. And that, our actual is what sets the baseline for what we can spend the next year. And so we came from kind of a depressed actual as we started planning for this year. And we've had a harsher than normal winter so far this year. So we've had an elevated level of winter expenses and kind of a shift in the summer programs
A
that.
little aside to that, directly related, however, we're looking at overtime both for the grounds, for kitchen. Also, do we have additional expenses in terms of salt or other equipment?
A lot of salt. A lot of salt, but that's, $750 a pallet. I mean, I think.
It's not $80,000 of
Yeah,
salt.
No, but I will tell you this.
It's mostly salary. And when you go through it kind of line by line items, if I focus on the corporate section of the ledger, we're running $20,000 over where we were last year. 10,000 of it is in building maintenance and repair, which is basically kitchen expenses.
I do think it's not on the capital. I think you probably put the 9,000.
I put it where the office tells me to put it.
I put capital.
It came through on the bills, it's going to this category.
Well, it needs to go to capital.
Then
The capital.
you gotta go back.
9,300. That's why it's way over.
Bills and reclassify it.
Okay.
The way it came to the board on the bills report.
What category are you looking at?
The cabinets were 9,000. The cabinets.
What category here?
Oh, I'm looking at building maintenance and repair.
And that's where you and I can sit down, right?
Yeah.
Brian, you were suggesting it come out of the capital fund instead?
It didn't go to capital. Capital's still zero. It should have went to capital.
I should have gone to capital, got it.
It doesn't change the bottom line, it may change this section of the report. The other 10,000 is just a little bit in just about every category. So that one doesn't worry me as much, that can be the timing of a paycheck. When we look into the recreation, there's a few categories where the numbers are big, and I don't know enough, this is where I have to work with Brian to figure out, is it the summer programs, is it the winter stuff, is it something else? But the big categories that are off a lot is the part-time cultural arts wages are $10,000 over where they were at this time a year ago.
No, part-time maintenance wages, I think. Is that what you mean?
No. It's not over.
RA 32 is $10,000 higher than it was at this time a year ago.
Right.
And you basically got no money to spend on it for the rest of the year, because you're down to about $2,000.
Here's the question.
Yeah.
Because fitness class is booming, that's all, there's revenue plus for every dime. It's a lot of him. I mean, it's a lot of fitness class. We didn't expect him to boom like he's booming, and he's booming. So at the end of the day, on the other side of this is the revenue coming in from his class.
Right. This is a measure of how are we doing against the appropriation ordinance.
Okay.
The revenue side is another side of the ledger to go look how we're doing over there.
What I'm saying is at the end of the year, are we in trouble?
If we go back to the general ledger report, we can track our revenue. We budgeted that we bring in $89,000 and we're sitting at $54,000 right now.
We got the rest of camp and another session of class.
And the end of the fiscal year is what?
June 30th. We've got a number of categories, again, summer day camp wages, youth in the park wages, that are all about $5,000 over where they were last year. That's probably just that summer timing thing. But you add them up, 5,000 here, 5,000 there, 5,000, they add up to, a big chunk of change. And then we're fine on IMRF and Social Security, and a little off on one of the workers' compensation. We're out of money for the year on, because that's way more than normal, but that's kind of impossible for us to ever get a right number, because just as soon as we budget off of one number, the state changes it and we get hit with something else.
Based on their formula.
Yeah, it's their formula, we can't really control it, we just try to get close to it every year, and then we have to just live with it, what it comes out to be. And that's a few $1,000s, it's not a big budget killer kind of number. But the point is, we're just in a much tighter budget year this year through a combination of a bunch of events. Not that we've gone crazy wild on spending, but it's not going to look very pretty in the the months ahead.
We have more going on in terms of programming and a more challenging winter, both of which contribute to additional salary costs.
Thank you.
Primarily.
Well, it's good to stay on top of this, just so we know.
Yeah.
A question I have is, I know that you helped take over for Dean, and you took the old sort of, I'm not sure if I'm using the right term, the bookkeeping, Dean way of doing things, and sort of professionalized them into your way of doing things. Do you think that affects anything if we compare the 2 years that should?
No, nothing in the accounting itself has changed. It's just, instead of being on a handwritten piece of paper in ledger books, it's
Okay.
automated in a spreadsheet.
Okay.
Further down. You can read my typing and
Yes.
can't read it.
Thank you.
David, we don't have you on the agenda, but
I have nothing to add. If you have any questions of me, I'm available to answer them.
any questions for David? Okay.
You need me?
I was gonna say, if you wanna.
I-
Mike and Diane, thank you very much.
Okay, so our report is pretty short and sweet this month. For class updates, registration is pretty much completely come in for the winter classes. For just studio classes alone, we're sitting at about $5,000 that has come in. And for Bryant's fitness coaching, he is now at over 5,000, which since I wrote this, we're now over 10,000 in revenue for winter classes. We're also expecting some revenue to come in because we're doing a CPR certification again on Saturday, March 1st. That's about $50 for residents and $55 for non-residents. So, and that registration is available for that online. It's going to run from 9 in the morning to noon. So,
That's on March 1.
yes, Saturday, March 1st.
Anybody's interested in I did last year was good.
I'm interested in meeting Brian. I mean, he can come to a meeting and
Yeah.
he pokes his head in, a round of applause or something.
Yeah, he's just
He's a
taking-
go-getter. He came in our office about 2.5 years ago, wanting to build up this program, and he's built it up. He's a go-getter.
Yeah, he's pretty much doubled the amount of money we're bringing in every session, so.
And he gets 75% of that, we get 25%?
That's correct.
That's
That's the agreement.
Yes.
And he doesn't, and he gets free space,
He gets free
and
space.
you go.
Yeah, well, we purchased all of his equipment.
The equipment we own.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some stuff that he's brought in of his own, but any, like, major things we own, Ridgeville owns the equipment.
Diane, you said CPR is 50 for residents and 55 for non-residents?
Yes. Okay, camp updates, registration, we had to close day camp both session 1 and 2 before February 1st, which I guess has never been done before. It's a huge precedent for us, but the day camp is closed. We do have a waiting list going for that.
Is that the spring day camp or is that a summer?
This is the summer day camp for 5 to 7-year-olds,
About how many kids would that be, about?
38.
38 in each
38.
session. And they're over in Cayman, so we can't really make it any bigger because we run out of room, so. Arts camp, I believe we're about 1 or 2 slots away from closing it for session 1. Same for session 2, so it's going really well. Day camp, 3 to 4-year-old is also filling up pretty fast, so registration is looking really good for camps. And then the only other thing, I'm sorry, oh no, sorry. The only other thing we were going to talk about was garden to table, which we already did discuss it. It is scheduled to start March 3rd, which is Monday, and that's when they're going to start doing their, I guess, propagation of the seeds. So that's about it. We opened up registration for garden to table last week.
Diane, just to help me too, to remember, I think last year we talked about looking at, statistics of attendance and who comes to class, so we could have some data that's something we can use to measure from year to year how well we're doing in our camps. Last year, I think we ended with, was it 125 campers?
Slots.
Slots. So actually, less people, but 125 slots. is that about how many slots we're gonna fill up hopefully for this summer?
Well, yeah, I mean, we keep the same number of slots for each camp, just because if it gets too big, we don't have the space for it.
And the question I have, not for you, but for the board, just to explore this year, is to think about what drives that limit. You know, we got 6,000 kids, right, in our district, basically. And I'm wondering, is it space, probably, or what's limiting, you know, the numbers? Why can't we have 1,000? I'm wondering if our board could explore this year, maybe thinking outside the box, and collaborative, private, public kind of cooperation. If it's space, are there other places we could do Ridgeville parks within our district, but not necessarily on our property?
So your question is, do we really utilize or maximize the value of our available parklands
Yes.
in hosting as many kids and organized programs as we can?
Because my understanding in conversations with office staff is that it does kind of emotionally hurt to turn people down.
It
There's
does.
people calling and wanting to do things, and we're turning them down, and I'm guessing because of space. That's just my guess. Am I right?
Well, this room right here, we have 2 camps going on at one time, and if it's raining, thunder and lightning, we have to come inside. This fire code's 58. I mean, so we gotta look at fire code.
Same thing with.
Cayman is like 52, but when you put counselors, additional staff, and all the kids in one room, you have fire code.
And I mean, I know last summer, especially over at Cayman, because there's no trees around there, it got very hot over there, so they were bringing those kids in on a very regular basis, just so that we didn't have to worry about kids getting a heat stroke and everything. So we do have to have some kind of facilities that have air conditioning.
So just a thought, you know, going into this year, maybe we could start as a board looking at other spaces that aren't part of our parks, and possibly could become a year from now an option so we don't have to turn people down.
Be like, let's just say for instance.
Churches, schools, large buildings, there's a lot of community anchors in our community that would love to help us.
Well, there's overlapping districts, right? So those kids in the district also have access to the city
Yes.
parks and city facilities that open.
Yeah, but I mean, there's Oakton School just across the street, which for the most part is occupied during the summertime. There's additional space there to consider. If we went far enough west, I don't know about Levy Center, but it's Dewey School, isn't it? Dawes.
Shoot.
And then there's Dawes School farther west, where, you know, classrooms or auditorium space.
It's interesting, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I just wonder what, you know, crossing over to boundaries into other entities, liability and things like that. I mean, I'm sure there's a few issues with that you'd have to explore.
Right.
Oh, so sir, you came in after citizen comments. Would you identify yourself?
Bob Seidberg, Evidence to Review, Pioneer Press.
Do you have any comments? Because you came in after citizen comments, so I thought maybe.
No, I just listen to comments.
All right, thank you. Just want to be sure. Dan.
What was it, time for thank you? Is that on the agenda? Consortium. Basically, what I've got here is a letter just thanking our consortium from our commissioner, so there's a place for people to sign if they feel comfortable with it. And I'll give you a copy of what, yes. And the reason why the original copy is not on letterhead is so that if we are able to send, 40 thank yous to the individuals that were part of this consortium, each one could get a nice, color Ridgeville letter. So it's basically a thank you. And sorry, I'm not very good at passing out here. In the community here, if you take a look. Basically, it says, our Board of Commissioners did receive the Ridgeville Park District suggestions during our December 2013 board meeting, and we acknowledge it was hard work that bared some fruit. We have taken action on some of the ideas the consortium gave us. And for your information, I just attached on the back of this the actual letter that the consortium gave us back in December. And some of the things, I just listed that we're already doing, that's, I think, something we should celebrate and let them know this is some of the fruit from their efforts from working about a year and a half trying to help us. For instance, recording board meetings and posting on YouTube. It actually hasn't become a link yet, but Mike's working on that. He's going to link it through our email and our webpage. And our two gentlemen from the community here that play basketball at Riva Park and live across from Riva Park, Mr. Anthony and Mr. D, brothers, are now our park district recorders. And in addition to that, I think they've been able to learn a little bit about democracy here at a local level. So on many levels, I'm pretty proud of these two young men for helping us with this. Thank you, guys. Also joining a collaborative skateboarding committee. We're working with the city. I met this week. We had our first meeting. And Parks and Recreation and the city would like to continue working with us and exploring ways that our youth might be able to, and older people who are brave enough to skate in a park somewhere that probably would be made out of concrete, that would look sort of like these skateboards, you've seen them maybe, like a bowl. But no decisions, we're very infant stage on this. Probably the soonest skaters can start skating on something that everyone agrees we should have is 3 years from now. It's expensive, probably $500,000 each. So where are we going to come up with $1 million, and which park would it go to, and how do we serve sort of the north and south area? There's also the reality that the city is looking at a tight budget as well, and they're looking at using their $1.5 million grant money to renovate here at the Robert Crown. So there's really not something just sitting there available to open up and build a skate park, but they're open to us still collaborating and working with them on this idea. And I would, with your permission, like to continue and work with that and basically update you every month on how that's going. 3, partnering with YOU to help strengthen relationships with our youth. Their board and their director, Seth, is very open. They love the idea. They've been part of our consortium, and anything they can do to help in our parks by putting in folks that we feel comfortable with, Brian, like we've done in the past, they really want to continue that. Revising the RPD policies and procedures, we've already started that. It could take years to get an ultimate, full policy together, but I think that's a good process that we're starting. And 5, developing the RPD Board of Commissioners guidelines, same thing. Brian, I really appreciated last month you're handing out that one sample of a guideline for commissioners. That was a great idea. My conversations with different districts, park districts here in the state of Illinois, everyone I've talked with is very open to give us free ideas, send us free policies. We don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel. So that's out there for us as a resource. Also, 6, sponsoring free play in the parks. Just want you to know that one of the first free park experiences happened this last Sunday. I tried to send you guys a link. I don't know if you saw it, but it's a little video clip of about 20 local constituents who love to be outdoors when it's cold. And thanks to Brian and his crew, they moved some of the snow off of one of the courts here in the park, and it was just a hoot. Someone about the age of 2 was there, a dog was there, and there were some older folks, in their 30s, all playing hockey. It was just a hoot. So anyway, this is a thank you, and it's coming around, I think, starting with maybe, are you starting with it?
Yeah, I think so.
So if we can, pass it around after it's signed where you feel comfortable, and we'll have Anna Christina mail that out to the members.
You want to talk quickly about the cash receipt?
Oh, sure. Is that on the agenda?
No, but I mean, because next month I can pay.
Oh, sure. Mike Drennan and I had a wonderful dinner at Trattoria where we had our 5 master gardener folks brainstorming on how we could explore ways to do more with our gardening. And we submitted that bill, I don't know what it was, $200 some bucks?
$222.
Yeah, for the 7 of us. So in my opinion, it was a good investment and you can see what we've got now.
So
want the Ridgeville Park District to pay for your dinner? Is that
Uh,
what we're asking?
I think,
After the fact?
well, it was a park business, yeah. That's what I'm submitting, but it's not a proposal now. I think it comes next month. Is that right, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I could, yeah. Next month's better camp, which starts tomorrow.
It's already been spent, so you're asking us after the fact to pay for your dinner.
Is there a protocol that I'm not following?
Well, I guess I would think that you ask if that were all right, or, I mean, that's just kind of a big
We hadn't
dinner.
communicated, actually, on it, and it was paid by the time I got to the cashier. I rather fell down on that personally, as a constituent and as a neighbor. I apologize.
Apologize for what, Mike?
Well, I think normal protocol would have us bring such a cost before the board beforehand, or an understanding that such a cost would be incurred in designing the program. That hadn't been done. So what I'd like to do is thank the board for entertaining new options and opportunities to build community through an expanded garden table program, and ask if there might be some portion of that bill it might help compensate in terms of time and commitment for the professionals involved.
In a sense, this does bring up, now that you mention it, Patrick, this is one reason why it would be helpful to have guidelines for us commissioners, because it would be good to have something to measure how we're doing. I have nothing to go on.
Yeah. But I would suggest we pay it, and then, in the future, like say, hey, we're going to do this, will the board cover it?
That sounds good.
That's what
And
we're
eventually,
thinking.
with the hope, we'll write a protocol.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the board is gonna be paying for 2 board members' dinner for a night out, where you could have done it here in the,
We didn't go to Vegas, Patrick.
I know, but you're asking for $220 after the fact, so I just want to get an understanding of this. It's never occurred before in my time on the board. Somebody coming to the board after money has been spent, commissioners.
Brian does almost every month.
Well, because he's staff.
I mean, that's my
This
point.
is a
There's no
board.
protocol, Patrick.
Okay,
So that's right.
I mean, there is
Down the road.
protocol when you use common sense, I think.
It also, Brian's primarily responsible for executing our programs. He is, in fact, the park director. So he takes policies, implements them, assists in the execution of classes and their support, and as such, holds the responsibility for expensing those items deemed necessary on a daily or weekly basis. We are bringing this to the Park District as a one-time discretionary expense.
Well, actually, I'm very open to donating it. It's not the money for me, but I would like us to come up with a protocol down the road that, for example, Ryan passed out last month. I thought it was a great idea. We do need guidelines as commissioner.
Yeah, I mean, just for instance, what fund is that coming out of?
Special event.
I would say to have any expenditure approved by the board before it approves, basically. That's the program.
Basically, what I try to do is say, we're going to do a staff lunch and throw it out there, and we're going to do the holiday lunch, boom, and then, but, to Dan's credit, he handed it to me and said, let's bring it up in front of the board meeting and see if we can get it approved. Okay.
Okay.
Rob, you have any comments on it?
No, I agree with what Brian suggested earlier, and that was that, it was one-off time, it was, pretty much for a good reason, but going forward, we need to set some protocol for that. But I also, it makes sense to me to have guidelines. I mean, that's the bottom line, so.
Who are the other participants? Who are the other participants in the dinner?
The teachers, the teachers,
Potential advance.
Amy, Brian, Craig, excuse me. Trying to remember the other names, Michael. Just the 5 teachers plus Michael.
James, Craig, Amy, Gabby
Thank you.
Testafon.
Does it make sense, would you,
Emily Lake.
so there's an understanding that this type of thing won't occur again until it's brought up before the board, before an expenditure. Is that agreed to by the board?
I think there's an understanding we'll come up with a protocol. It hasn't been written yet.
Okay. Would it make sense to, since the teachers were involved and maybe a couple other students, to eliminate the 2 board members being reimbursed?
Oh, no, I donate, no, really, I donate, it's no big deal, it's not the money. But I do want us to get ahead of the game here and start writing protocol.
Okay, that's fine. So, this item is...
Well, actually, when tonight, and Brian, you brought it up, it wasn't,
What's that?
we weren't proposing anything. I think it was for next month's petty cash.
Okay, so it won't be next month's petty cash then?
Well, it's up to you guys.
Well,
No,
that's what I'm trying to...
I'm donating it, that's fine.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, discussion, Dan?
Yeah, actually, this is a good segue. What I did is I just simply spent about 20 minutes looking at our city's conflict of interest policy and ethics policy, and I emailed that to you guys, I think, this morning. This is just a hard copy. And also, our Illinois State Parks recommended ethics policy. And you guys don't mind passing this out to folks. And I won't read it all, and I'm not proposing anything, I just want it to be in contrast or complement, maybe is a better word, with what Ann and Rob came up with that we're going to talk about next. I think, and you've heard me say this before, it's unethical, in my opinion, for elected commissioners, elected officials to hire close family members. I also believe it's unethical and inappropriate for any government agency's administrator to hire close family members.